Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another Keep Michigan Learning webinar hosted by Michigan Virtual. I'm Dr. Chris Harrington, and in today's session, I'll lead us into a conversation with two of the Michigan Virtual lead instructors who will share their expertise as it relates to differentiating instruction in online environments. Before we dive into our topic for today, I do want to highlight a series of recorded webinars on learning continuity that's currently available on the Michigan Virtual website. They're all freely available, and I encourage everyone to visit the webpage listed at the bottom of this screen. It's michiganvirtual.org/learning-continuity. Our presenters for this session are two fantastic instructors from Michigan Virtual joining us today. First, we have Heather Murphy, who's the ELA lead instructor for Michigan Virtual. And then we also have Lori Coyle, who's the social studies lead instructor for Michigan Virtual. Heather, could you please start us off by providing us with a background of what differentiation is and what it is not?
Definitely, Chris. Differentiation is when we change the instructional approach to meet the needs of our students. Differentiation would involve building and delivering instruction using an assortment of teaching styles and giving students the option for consuming information and making sense of concepts and ideas. Instructors can differentiate the content, process, product, or learning environment. This is something that we would do for all of our students in a course, so differentiation should not be confused with accommodations and modifications. Differentiation promotes voice and choice in how learning takes place. Differentiated instruction includes all students learning the same content and being given choices in how to display their learning or access the material. So for example, in a math class, students could build a 3D scale model or design charts and graphs to demonstrate understanding of the same concept. A health teacher could have students create diagrams, brochures, or design a new app to promote better health. An accommodation, on the other hand, is something that changes how a student learns the material for specific students. Accommodations are provided for students based on their IEPs and 504 plans. These accommodations help students learn the same material and meet the same expectations as their peers. So for example, a student with dyslexia might listen to an audio version of the book, but it's still the same book that the rest of the class is reading. Accommodations and differentiations can look the same. However, if differentiation is not in place to meet the needs of specific learners, then accommodations would need to be provided.
So we know as teachers that differentiation is so important to not only student growth, but for individual success in any class and in any learning environment. In the online platform, teachers can still differentiate instruction, and we can do this through 4 different elements: content, process, product, and learning environment. And we're going to walk you through each of these areas and provide some examples on how they can be implemented into the online classroom. The first element is content. When teachers differentiate through content, they're still teaching the same skill or the same concept, but it's how the student accesses the information they need for the learning goal to be met, which may be different. Some of these ways we can do this as online instructors is through videos. In addition to text-based material that is offered in the course, you could differentiate by providing videos of the same ideas you are trying to teach. Providing alternate text, so not replacing the text itself, but giving them something different to look at. For example, if you're an English teacher and you're teaching Shakespeare like Heather does, you can provide them with a different version of the text, or text that can provide the student with a better understanding of what they're reading. Other ways, we can use personalized instructional videos, providing supplemental guided notes, and meeting with students to reteach material or specific concepts. A few examples to illustrate this in an online classroom. In this instructor's online classroom, YouTube is used to embed different content videos directly into their course through the announcements, and all students can access this in the course. These serve as supplemental resources for students and provide a different means of interacting with the content within the class. Here's another example of an instructor providing alternative text. Now keep in mind that this is not replacing the text that the course has provided. It rather is a different version or a better explanation of the text that students may understand a little bit better, or maybe you can include a visual or some sort of image that would help explain the concept for those visual learners as well. Personalized instructional videos are another way to differentiate content and a great way for us to connect with students directly. Outside of just finding that video on YouTube, you as the instructor can also create your own. This video was created by an online math instructor, and this instructor walks the students through step by step of completing a story problem. What's also neat about this example is that this instructor also took the opportunity to provide further explanation into some of the important terms the students would be encountering in this lesson. So there's a lot of different tools that you can use to create videos like this, such as YouTube, Loom, or Screencastify, I believe, was used to make the one that you're seeing on the screen. And those are just a few. There's many more tools out there that you could utilize. And lastly, meeting with students to reteach. This is another great way to not only differentiate, but it really focuses on that individualized learning that makes online instruction so powerful. By setting up meetings with students through Zoom or Adobe Connect, Google Meet, or even a phone call can really go a long way. These tools allow you to share your screen and walk through students through the assignment live together as you meet, and allows for students to also ask questions as you work through that problem together. And the last part, texting, which is also another great way to connect with students. And I do this all the time with my kids. And most times it's just a super quick question, but it does allow for that individual conversation to happen with your students. And it gives you that ability to kind of check in or gather feedback on when your students are, or where they're at, or how they're doing in the course. So this is another element that's crucial to differentiating your instruction in the classroom.
Next area where we can differentiate is process. That's how the student engages with the content to master it. There are several major ways that you can do this. You can vary the length of time to complete a task. You can provide a tiered activity that meets the same understanding, but with different levels of support and complexity for different students. Or you can provide an interactive resource to engage students more directly. We're going to take a look at examples of a few of these things. The first one we have here is providing tiered activity that meets the same understanding, but with different levels of support or complexity. This is an example of an ASL instructor walking their students through how they would access the recording elements that are needed to use in the class. This is in addition to the assignment as it stood, to give students just a little bit more information and guidance and a video tutorial of how to do each of these things. These support videos also help, with a variety of different tasks or things that you can add in. You could also kind of chunk an assignment for a student, perhaps instead of giving, the full essay, a student might need it to be a little bit more tiered, and you could walk them through step by step the process of creating an essay. That would also help differentiate the process for your students. Another way you can do this is to provide additional guidance, maybe use questions to reframe the concepts for students, giving them a different way to look at it or a different way to think about it. This also allows students to dig deeper into areas that are interesting or impactful to them, or that they've accessed that original information that you want them to master, and they can dig a little deeper into certain areas, while students who are still working on those initial concepts have the additional questions to frame things for them, but they can all be working at the same time on the same content. Interactive resources are also a great way to allow students to look at that information or process it in a different way. Quizlet is a great resource for that. It's out there and can be utilized by everyone online. They just have to make a quick account, or you can share things from your account and the students don't have to log in on their own. There are also a lot of other things that you could use, like Flipgrid for discussions, or Padlet to share information, across your course. You can also use surveys that you embed in your course to kind of see what the needs the students need met are. This is a quick survey that one of our instructors created, embedded in their course to kind of see how they were feeling. Are they confused by the instructions? Kind of what are they working on? What do they need to know? What concerns do they have? This is a really good way to kind of get that feeling that in a face-to-face class, you can kind of look around and see, you know, if students look like they're engaged or confused or struggling. This is a really good way to do that in the online environment, because you now have information from each student and you can kind of get an overall feel for the course and see where you might need to differentiate for everyone and students that you might need to, you know, contact and address it in a different way.
Thank you, Heather. So like process, we can also manipulate the product of our instructional teaching online to meet the needs of our students in this type of learning environment. There is so much flexibility in this, and it offers a wide variety of ways for students to demonstrate their knowledge. And some of the ways that we do this as online instructors is by accepting assignments in various forms, such as a presentation format or a video or a written essay or an audio file of some sort, allowing students to work in groups or individually, allowing students to create their own type of products, as long as it's the required elements are all included and the standards are still met in the course. And then lastly, allowing resubmissions or retakes to help establish that mastery that we want our students to achieve. I'm not going to go through each of those examples because I think you get the idea by many of them. But the one example I did want to share is how online teachers can encourage students to display their learning in a different format. I think sometimes this can be the hardest thing, I think, for online instructors to do. And this can be illustrated through your course announcements in your online class. As you can see in the example here, this instructor provides a super fun challenge for her students and encourages them to kind of think outside the box and to really get creative with their work. So in the image, this teacher, you can see, is posted in her announcements, asks the students to submit something other than the simple slide deck presentation that sometimes can be a little monotonous or boring. So this teacher asks the student to produce a video animation, either using Powtoons, or students can also present, you know, using videos of themselves to complete the assignment as well. So the neat thing I think about this one is that the teacher also models or demonstrates, and she puts her little link and video there too, how this can be done in the class. So a lot of different ways you can differentiate that product in your courses.
Here, the last area of differentiation we're going to talk about is learning environment. That covers how the class works and feels. And there are some major ways you can do this, which is integrating materials that reflect the culture and home settings of your students. Online courses are considered to be differentiated learning environments just because they are inherently different than a face-to-face classroom. Students, you know, already have the opportunity to work at their own pace in various different settings. You know, they can choose their quiet spaces that don't have distractions. It does require the instructor kind of setting some clear guidelines because it is very different than what students are used to in a face-to-face classroom, and then helping them develop those routines. So some ways that you can, you know, jump right in and help your student kind of manage online learning is to give them ways to help manage their time and their organization. Google tools are amazing for this. You know, you can use the G Suite applications to create and store documents, spreadsheets, slide decks, kind of all those tools, the different tools the students would need to create and submit their assignments. Google Calendar is an amazing tool to schedule things. Students often have trouble managing their time with the extra flexibility that online education can provide for them. So, you know, you can use that Google Calendar to say, you know, Monday I'm going to work on English, Tuesday I'm going to work on math, and they can schedule times. It will give them reminders, things like that. Google Keep's another great tool where students can kind of make checklists and those to-do lists and check things off as they get them done. A tool that I actually find great for myself is an online timer. I need to stay focused on this task. I'm going to work for an hour before I take a break. I set this timer, and until I hear it go off, I just keep working, and it helps me stay a little bit more focused. There are also lots of apps out there that students, instructors can use to block social media while they're working. These come in handy to kind of stop those distractions of, you know, oh, let's see, did somebody post something, or what's the latest news that's happening right now? It kind of helps you stay more focused in, you know, the online world where there might be more distractions than present in a face-to-face classroom.
Alrighty, so we have created a little game or quiz to check for your understanding and to test the knowledge that you learned today about differentiation in the online classroom. We have a series of questions, and you will decide if this is an accommodation or a differentiation in the classroom. So for the first question, is this an accommodation or is it differentiation? Giving students the option to demonstrate the learning through a presentation, essay, or podcast. This would be differentiation. You are giving students a choice in how to display or show their learning in the class. And this would fall under the product element that we talked about earlier in the webinar.
Okay, so our next question, changing a time test to have no time limit or to not be forced completion. Is this an accommodation or a differentiation? This would be an accommodation. This would be something that you would do to meet the specific needs of a student that's expressed in their IEP or 504 plan. It is not something that you would do for the whole class. Therefore, it would be an accommodation. Lori, why don't you finish us off?
Alrighty, sounds good, Heather, thanks. So the last one we have here for you today, all students are provided with written and audio versions of a short story, accommodation or differentiation. This would also be a differentiation because the concept or the skill that you're trying to teach is still remaining the same, but the content in which the students have access to is the part that's going to be different. Therefore, we are meeting the needs of all the learners in our course. And this would also fall under the element of content.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you. As we bring this particular conversation to an end, I'd like to highlight some key takeaways for our viewers. Heather and Lori, could you each please share a key concept that you feel that is important for teachers to walk away with from this presentation?
Thanks, Chris. I can provide 3 of those for us. Differentiation provides options and opportunities for all students. Providing different resources and paths can give students the opportunity to learn in the way that is right for them. And differentiation maximizes student growth and individual success.
Well, again, thank you so much for all of your time. I know you are really, really busy, but we certainly appreciate you giving up your time and share some of this expertise with our viewers. Thank you so much. Before we close for the day, I'd like to share a couple resources. As I mentioned before, michiganvirtual.org/learning-continuity is a website where we've curated a bunch of resources for you as school leaders and as teachers move to virtual or remote learning environments during extended school closures. We have a couple of continuity readiness rubrics, one just for learning in general, learning programs, and that's a great one for school leaders to help assess your readiness as a school system to move to extended school closures where you're required to teach in a remote learning environment. And we also have a rubric for teachers to help self-assess where you are as a teacher in your readiness to actually teach in this kind of environment. We also have some content for students that schools can use from our Michigan virtual courses, and that's available free for Michigan schools. And we also have some free content and courses for professional development for teachers, for Michigan teachers. So these resources can be accessed on the website as well. And as I mentioned before, the webinar series, we have all the recordings from that series. We also have a Facebook page that's been launched, and it's a great exchange location. We call it a community of practice because there's a bunch of sharing and supporting each other, teachers and administrators alike. Feel free to go to the Michigan Virtual Facebook page, and you'll be able to jump right into the Keep Michigan Learning Facebook page, that group there. And we also have a comprehensive document for school leaders. It's called Learning Continuity, a planning guide for school leaders, and it helps those school leaders looking to make this kind of a shift to a remote learning environment think about all the different facets of schooling that need to be considered when actually moving from your traditional brick and mortar based environment to a remote learning environment that leverages digital content and perhaps online learning. So again, great information shared here today. However, if you do have any questions or if you would like to speak to us directly about any of the content covered here or anything covered in any of the webinar series, again, I'm Chris Harrington. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. My email address is right there. It's charrington@michiganvirtual.org. You can also connect with me through Twitter or Michigan Virtual in general through Twitter, and the IDs are listed there. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the time you've taken, and we sure hope that this webinar has helped you. And we look forward to talking and sharing with you in the future. Thank you.